Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always.
Today, we're going back in time to the 19th century,
Okay.
a time when the idea of Christ's return wasn't like some fringe theory.
Right.
It was a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
People from all walks of life were genuinely convinced that history was about to change forever.
Yeah, it's a fascinating period.
Absolutely.
There's just this incredible energy surrounding the whole thing.
And it's not just some historical curiosity, right? This whole thing.
No, not at all.
It raises all these questions about faith.
Exactly.
Human nature.
And our search for meaning. It makes you think.
So to get into all of this,
Mm-hmm.
we're diving into a chapter from this book,
Okay.
A Great Religious Awakening, Prophecy and the Advent Movement.
Sounds intriguing.
And one of the things that struck me
Yeah.
was that this wasn't just some isolated group.
Right.
This movement, it literally spanned continents,
It's remarkable how widespread it became.
like uniting people from all different backgrounds.
It really was.
So where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, the book starts by setting the stage, with this powerful image.
Okay.
The first angel's message from Revelation 14.
Okay.
This angel flying through the heavens, declaring, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come."
Whoa.
You can almost feel the urgency and the global scale of it, right?
Yeah. It's definitely not your typical Sunday sermon.
Not at all.
This was serious stuff.
And it wasn't just a vague warning either.
Right.
This message was tied to specific biblical prophecies.
So they weren't just making this up as they went along.
No, they were basing this on their understanding of Scripture,
Interesting.
especially prophecies from the book of Daniel.
Daniel, lots of symbolism and visions.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So how did they connect this to like a specific time?
Well, you had folks like William Miller
Okay.
and his collaborators in America. They were meticulously studying these prophecies, trying to decipher this timeline for Christ's return.
So they were doing some serious calculations.
Yeah, they were trying to crack the code.
Based on these ancient texts.
Precisely.
And what did they come up with?
Well, their calculations converged on a date, the spring of 1844.
1844.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this powerful message,
Right.
specific prophecies, and now a date.
It's all coming together.
And this is where things get even more interesting.
How so?
We're introduced to this guy, Dr. Joseph Wolff,
Ah, yes, Dr. Wolff.
known as the missionary to the world.
Quite a title, isn't it?
This guy's life was straight out of an adventure novel.
He was a remarkable individual.
Okay, spill the tea.
Well, Wolff spent 24 years traveling across continents.
Chasing hardship.
I mean, unbelievable hardships.
Like what?
He was sold into slavery at one point.
Sold into slavery?
Yeah.
That's insane.
He faced multiple death threats.
Wow, this guy was dedicated.
I mean, it's hard to even fathom facing even one of those situations, let alone all of them.
So what drove him? What was his mission?
Well, through his own study of biblical prophecy,
Oh.
Wolff had arrived at a similar time frame for the Second Coming as Miller.
So both of them, on opposite sides of the world,
Exactly.
came to the same conclusion about 1844.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Independently.
Completely independently.
Wow.
This convergence just added to the growing sense of anticipation and urgency surrounding that year.
It's like a historical puzzle, right?
Mm.
All these pieces coming together.
Exactly.
But Wolff's travels, they weren't just about, spreading the gospel.
No, they were much more than that.
He had these incredible encounters along the way.
He did.
Like with,
He found this remote community in Bokhara.
Bokhara.
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's in Central Asia.
Okay.
And the Arabs of Yemen,
Mm.
both of these groups, they held beliefs about Christ's imminent return.
So this idea wasn't just limited to, Europe and America.
No, it had spread much further than that.
It's like this idea had seeped into all these different cultures.
It really speaks to how deeply this idea had permeated different societies.
Yeah, and think about the world back then.
Mm-hmm.
Wars, revolutions, social upheaval.
Right.
People were looking for something.
For hope, for change.
Yeah, like a divine intervention, some kind of cosmic reset.
Exactly.
It's like the world was holding its breath.
Waiting for something monumental to happen.
And it wasn't just limited to Wolff's travels either.
No, not at all.
This movement, it reached England,
Mm-hmm.
South America,
Mm-hmm.
Germany, France, Switzerland, Scandinavia.
You name it.
It's crazy.
It really is.
It's like this global wave of anticipation.
It really was a global phenomenon.
So this idea was everywhere.
Yeah, it really captured the imagination of people from all walks of life.
It makes you wonder, though, like, why?
Yeah.
Why did this message resonate so deeply with people
That's a great question.
from such diverse backgrounds?
You know, it really gets to the heart of the human need for hope.
Especially during times of uncertainty, right?
Absolutely.
Like, was this anticipation of a divine reset?
Mm-hmm.
Was that, like, a way of coping with the challenges of that era?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because the world was going through some serious stuff back then.
It was.
But it's important to remember, for many people, this wasn't just about escaping hardship.
Right.
It was about a deep longing for something more.
For a better world.
Yeah, like a world where things were actually fair and just.
Exactly.
And this Advent message, it offered that.
It did.
This vision of a future where God's kingdom would finally be established on earth.
A future where wrongs would be righted.
So it was as much about social transformation
Yes.
as it was about personal salvation.
Absolutely.
Like they were looking for both.
A change in the world and a change within themselves.
Wow. So what happens when this predicted time comes and goes
Right.
and Christ doesn't return?
Well, that's the big turning point.
This is what's known as the Great Disappointment, right?
Exactly.
1844 passed, and the world kept spinning.
It did.
I can't even imagine how those people must have felt.
It was a devastating blow for many.
Yeah, like all your hopes and dreams just crashing down.
People felt betrayed, disillusioned.
I mean, some people abandoned their faith altogether.
Yeah, it's understandable.
When your deepest hopes are shattered like that.
It's a natural human response.
But what about those who remained?
Yeah.
How did they deal with this apparent failure of prophecy?
Well, they had to grapple with some tough questions.
Like what?
Did we get the date wrong?
Mhm.
Or did we misunderstand the event itself?
So they had to reevaluate their whole understanding of prophecy.
It was a period of intense introspection and debate.
And what did they come up with?
Some concluded that there had been a miscalculation, like maybe they got the math wrong. Others believed that the date was right,
Okay.
but the event itself had been misinterpreted.
So what did they think happened?
They proposed that Christ hadn't returned to earth in a visible, physical way.
But that he had begun a special work of judgment.
Yeah, in the heavenly sanctuary.
Okay, hold on. The heavenly sanctuary, what's that?
Well, this gets into some biblical symbolism.
Okay.
You know, the book of Hebrews talks about this heavenly sanctuary,
Okay.
which is like a counterpart to the earthly tabernacle
Right.
described in the Old Testament.
So this heavenly sanctuary, they believe that's where Christ entered in 1844
Exactly.
to begin this work of judgment.
Before his return to earth.
So instead of a physical return to earth,
Right.
they believed that Christ had begun this, like, spiritual work of judgment in heaven.
Precisely.
That's interesting.
And this interpretation, it became central to the beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Right, the church that emerged from this whole Millerite movement.
Exactly.
So the Great Disappointment, it didn't end the movement.
No, not at
It
that
led to
level.
all these new interpretations,
Yeah.
theological debates, and even the formation of new denominations.
It's a testament to the resilience of faith
Yeah, and the human capacity to adapt.
and to reinterpret beliefs in the face of unforeseen circumstances.
It also raises questions about the nature of prophecy itself.
It does.
Like, what are we supposed to make of these prophecies
Right.
if they don't always unfold the way we expect them to?
It challenges us to think about prophecy in a new way.
So not as a rigid, deterministic prediction of future events,
Exactly.
but rather as a symbolic language, pointing to broader spiritual truths.
Right. It's about understanding God's plan
Even if the specific details
and the timing.
remain a mystery.
Exactly.
It's been quite the journey so far, hasn't it?
It really has.
From all that anticipation surrounding 1844
Right.
to the Great Disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
and then all these new theological interpretations.
It's fascinating how this movement evolved.
Absolutely.
It really is.
But I think the big question is,
Yeah.
what does all of this mean for us today?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Like, what's the lasting legacy of this whole Advent movement?
You know, it's not just about specific doctrines or denominations.
It's bigger than that.
It's about a shift in perspective, I think.
Okay, how so?
A way of engaging with faith, prophecy,
Yeah.
and the idea of living in this time of urgency.
So it's less about predicting a specific date
Right.
and more about, like, cultivating a certain mindset.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
A way of approaching life in light of eternity.
That's deep.
One of the key takeaways for me
Yeah.
is the importance of staying grounded in Scripture.
Okay.
but also being open to re-examining our interpretations.
So not just blindly accepting things.
Right. You have to think critically.
Like the Adventists.
Exactly.
They faced this huge disappointment in 1844.
Yeah.
But they didn't just give up on their belief.
They went back to the Bible.
Right.
Studied, debated.
And came up with a new understanding.
A deeper understanding of God's plan.
So it's like this reminder that faith isn't static.
Exactly.
It's a journey.
It's a process.
Questioning.
Rediscovering.
It's about constantly learning and evolving.
And not being afraid to wrestle with those tough questions.
Exactly.
Or to, refine our understanding as we grow.
It's a lifelong process.
I think that's a valuable lesson for anyone.
I agree.
No matter what you believe.
It's about being open-minded.
And another thing that struck me.
Yeah.
This emphasis on living a life of preparation.
Yes, that's a big one.
Not just for some future event.
Right.
But for, how we live right now.
It's about integrating your beliefs
Right.
into your daily life.
So it's not just something you think about on Sundays. It's about making it real.
Living it out.
In everything you do.
The Advent movement, it challenged people to really examine their priorities.
Yeah.
To connect with God on a deeper level.
And to live a life of compassion, justice, service.
To embody those values.
That's powerful.
It is.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day.
I know, right? And lose sight of what really matters.
We all do it.
But this idea of living with a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Not in a fearful way.
Right.
But in a way that motivates you to, make the most of your time.
To live intentionally.
To live with purpose.
To make a difference.
That's a message I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely.
And, one last thing I wanted to touch on.
What's that?
This whole idea of the end times.
Right.
It's not just an Adventist thing.
No, not at all.
It's like this fascination that spans cultures and religions.
People have been talking about the end of the world for centuries.
What is it about these prophecies that's so captivating?
Maybe it's this innate longing for justice.
Okay, yeah.
For a world where things are made right.
Where suffering is redeemed.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's this recognition that this world, as we know it,
isn't all there is.
that there's something more.
Something beyond our current understanding.
It's like we're part of this bigger story.
A story that extends beyond our individual lives.
Yeah, like this cosmic narrative.
That's a pretty awe-inspiring thought, isn't it?
It really is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Advent movement, I want to encourage you to think about its legacy. Not as some historical artifact, but as a living conversation. A set of questions and challenges that are still relevant today.
So what questions should we be asking ourselves?
Well, how do you personally grapple with this idea of living in a time of urgency? What does it mean for you to live a life of preparation?
Yeah.
How do you make sense of prophecy and its role in shaping our understanding of the world?
Those are some big questions.
They are.
But they're worth thinking about.
I think so.
We've only just scratched the surface today.
There's always more to explore.
And I encourage you to keep digging.
Keep learning.
Keep seeking.
And keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll be back soon with more fascinating topics.
Until then, keep exploring.
And keep those minds open.
See you next time.